Hey, welcome into the Snap episode 208. Your boy Mack here, joined as always by my co-host Landon, coming to you July 25th. Man, the NFL season's like literally around the corner. We're going to be seeing preseason games in little over a week. I'm super excited. I know Landon is as well. Tonight we're going to be diving into running back situations that are less than ideal. There's maybe more potential competition for touches. We're going to try to break it down, tell you who is the best bet to return value at their current average draft position. Lando, what's going on?
Mac, I'm doing good. Welcome into the Snap Army and everyone getting ready for their 2022 fantasy season. I'm glad you're back. I'm glad you're here. Mac and I are here to help you figure out these backfields. I mean, the running back position is one of the most valuable positions in fantasy. Not only do they give you some consistent fantasy points when they're starting, but there's a lot of trade value when when a backup running back, for example, gets that full-time starter role, you can get the world for him. So make sure you stay tuned. Subscribe to the Snap, like this video, share with your friends, and join our Discord. Find the episode or the link in the episode description. Join our Discord. You can bounce ideas off of Mac and I. We've got a great community of like-minded fantasy people in there. A lot of fun. We also have a YouTube membership. If you want to support us at all, click that join button. You get a private Discord server. You could probably get an invitation to a listener league as well. Plus, we're giving away some fun stuff every single year. So make sure to join our YouTube community and also get in that Discord as well if you just want some free content. You there, Mac?
Oh, yeah, sorry. I don't know. The internet timed out on me. Yeah, absolutely. That kind of reminds me we are going to announce the Listener League entrant tonight. And we're also going to take your mailbag questions. So throughout the stream, if you're joining us on YouTube, go ahead and leave those questions. I see a couple already in here, and we'll get to them at the end of the video. The goal here tonight is to just go through some quick news and notes that's been coming out as training camps are starting to unfold, and then get into the segment and then handle your mailbag questions. So going into news and notes, pretty fitting that we get some news on running backs. James Robinson, Jacksonville running back, standout running back, reportedly not starting the year on the physically unable to perform list, the PUP list, after tearing his Achilles last year. That's great news for James Robinson. His current ADP is 121. A far cry from Travis Etienne, his complement, who looks to maybe usurp him this year, but we'll see. And we're going to talk about that situation tonight, a little precursor there, but really good news for James Robinson.
Yeah, it's interesting. We haven't seen too many people come back from an Achilles tear. I mean, Marlon Mack, Cam Akers, most recently, they came back but didn't quite look like themselves.
Right.
So can James Robinson, the undrafted guy, like breakout running back, can he come back on a team that's really not projected to score that many points? We'll talk about it later. As a tease, like Mac just did as well. I'm excited, Mac. What else you got going here for the news?
Oh, rookie wide receiver news. Christian Watson was placed on the PUP for undisclosed reasons shortly after signing his rookie deal. He was one of the last to sign his rookie contract. They agreed to a 4-year, $9.7 million deal, 7.5 of that guaranteed. And the Lions also placed Javonte Williams on the non-football injury list, which is different than the PUP because the injury that Williams sustained was in college. So that sort of qualifies him for a different list. He's projected to kind of miss training camp and some of the regular season at this point, but we should see Javonte Williams on the field at some point this year, but unlikely to be the start of your year.
So J.K. Dobbins is opening camp on the PUP, but however, when it's a preseason PUP, they can come off anytime. There's no designated time for them to stay on the PUP. So just because, so the earlier report of J.K. Dobbins kind of fighting on Twitter with Rappaport that he will be ready for week 1. I suppose it's still possible that he is ready, but he's not going to be a participant in training camp or probably the preseason.
It's him and Jesus training, doing really good things.
Yeah.
And then a really sad bit of news. John Metchi, rookie wide receiver for the Texans, was diagnosed with leukemia this week. So thoughts and prayers for John and his family, and hopefully a good, quick recovery wins that battle. But I know a lot of people had high hopes for him this season, carving a path for a lot of work in an offense that desperately needed some talent. And we're going to have to wait a year, hopefully. So prayers up for John Metchi. That's pretty much all I had to report on. I'm sure, next week we're going to have a lot more news to talk about. I saw Eric make note about something about Algier, beat reporter, saying that he's going to be the lead back in Atlanta. I don't take a lot of what beat reporters have to say to heart. This is sort of something where we're going to have to say, like, look, this is either I take it at face value or I just skip it. And this one for me is a next. Let's move on. People have to write articles. People have jobs to do. And someone reaching on that, albeit it's a very dry running back room, and that's maybe a possibility. I'm not going to read too far into that right now. So that doesn't really change anything for me.
Yeah, I mean, if you're a sports writer, this is a pretty dry time in the year. There's not much going on.
If you're a content creator, it's a dry time too.
Exactly. And we are here giving you weekly content, staying consistent. Hopefully this video helps people for the next month and a half while you're still preparing for your drafts. But either way, Mac, we're here grinding.
We're going to try to grind through these running backs that we're going to talk about here tonight. What do you do when you see that a backfield might be quote unquote split? And we're not saying that it's necessarily a 50-50 workload, but people are torn on who they should actually take for fantasy because they might be losing confidence in one player or rising on another. They see the potential opportunity if somebody should go down. And the question is, if you had to choose one, who would you choose for fantasy football in 2022? That's kind of what we're talking about here tonight in this segment. So based on some of the duos that we've talked about and some of the responses in the Discord, we've come up with a list of players, and we're going to try to choose one or the other at the current ADP, only fitting that we would start off with Aaron Jones and AJ Dillon of the Green Bay Packers. I will flip this over to you because you know that I will have a lot to say, but go ahead, Lando, and give me your take.
I love this duo, actually, Mac. And I do want to preface kind of this list by saying you can absolutely draft split backfields. You don't have to only gravitate towards a bell cow running back. They're few and far between, and more backfields are becoming split workloads, and there is still fantasy value to be had. And the Green Bay backfield is a great example because they have two running backs that have different archetypes and they can do different things. Aaron Jones is going early in drafts and is projected to see a lot of targets. And that's why I really like drafting Aaron Jones. There's a ton of vacated targets, obviously, in Green Bay with Davante Adams and MBS leaving, and Aaron Rodgers is so consistent that I believe, and it's not far off to project that Aaron Jones is basically just a slot wide receiver. He's kind of like what we saw Deebo Samuel as last year. Like, it's not a far reach to do that. And the Green Bay Packers run the ball so much. They're a very slow team, but that's because they have such a strong running duo with AJ Dillon. He got more attempts than most. I mean, Aaron Jones owners want to believe and wish that he didn't get that, but AJ Dillon is a monster and he will be valuable on his own. Now, the split, Mac, what would you project that the split percentage is between the two of them right now going into this year?
Ooh, well, last year we actually saw AJ Dillon out rush in terms of attempts, like
Right.
carries on the ground. He actually had more recorded carries than Aaron Jones did. But when you come down to total touches, Aaron Jones still had more because he had 65 targets in the passing game. But AJ Dillon proved, pardon?
You have to take that into account.
You absolutely do.
Targets mean a lot.
Targets mean a lot. And total touches, it was still Aaron Jones. Some things that I actually found interesting when it came down to negative game scripts or 2-minute drills, Aaron Jones had a 70% snap count.
Love that.
His utilization was at 70% compared to AJ Dillon's 30. So when it comes down to, a must-win situation or where they're trailing, you're going to see a lot of Aaron Jones. Looking at their schedule, there's probably not going to be a lot of times when this actually happens this year. But there's pros for both of them, and I actually think there's a world where both of them can be very, very serviceable, almost like an Alvin Kamara, Mark Ingram situation when Kamara kind of broke out in the league. And you've got the hammer and you've got the nail. So Aaron Jones still holds elite elusiveness. 2.4 yards before contact and 2.3 yards after contact, which was 9th in the league. He still maintains that ability to make people miss and break big plays. He also profiles to be the pass catcher coming off 65 target season. The thing with AJ Dillon that a lot of people are going to like, and what I like, he just gets high value touches. If you play in a point per first down league or half, you get some type of bonus. He had 50 rushes for a first down last year. He had 103 red zone rushing attempts, and he had 10 attempts inside the 5, converting for 4 touchdowns. That was 10th in the league for attempts inside the 5. So we're talking about a guy who is involved when it matters for fantasy. I think there is a world where both of these guys can exist, and you don't have to have one go down for the other to be relevant, which is, I think, something we're going to talk about with some of these cases. But I don't believe that to be the case with AJ Dillon, but you have that upside built in if anything were to happen to Aaron Jones. But I think we're unanimous in this, in that you can absolutely draft them both at their current costs.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. I completely agree. We have a comment here, 60-40 split. I would say that'd be overall touches. Like you said, I think AJ Dillon continues to get more actual rushing attempts.
Sure.
But Aaron Jones combined should get more touches, and those pass attempts will be, or those receptions, will be more valuable touches. So of course, Aaron Jones is the better pick and should get more, will finish with more fantasy points at the end of the season.
And even with the Packers having a very soft schedule, their defense is absolutely stacked. There's going to be probably a lot of time for them to touch the football. And like you brought up, they were the slowest in terms of plays per game, but they're super efficient. They score. They put points on the board. And I think it's going to be through these two guys because they honestly might be their best two players.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Let's move on to the Dallas Cowboys, a very controversial and highly debated duo in this backfield. America's team. There's going to be people that drafted Zeke last year that really didn't think he performed very well, Mac.
Correct. You drafted him as the RB4 and he returned RB6 value. Look, despite Zeke having a quote unquote down season last year, he was still top 10 in the following metrics: snap share, carries, targets, receptions, rushing yards, touchdowns, evaded tackles, all while facing a stacked front 24.1% of the time. That was the 5th highest among active running backs. He was also top 5 in routes run and red zone touches. So you want to talk about a guy who continued to be elite. It was Zeke Elliott, and the Cowboys have proven to have a stubborn loyalty to Zeke. They paid him $90 million over 6 years. He's best friends with the quarterback. He's not going anywhere, unfortunately. But I do acknowledge the upside that Tony Pollard possesses.
Of course.
I think you have to.
If you only looked at their rush attempts and nothing else, Pollard looks like the better running back.
He does.
He looks more explosive. Every
does.
time Zeke came off, Pollard looks incredible. And Zeke looked like he was running on mud. He had sand in the shoes.
From Mexico. He dragged it back with him.
Yeah, that's a good question, Mac. When are the videos of like these players working out coming through? I haven't seen. Maybe I'm just not on enough like NFL Twitter, but these workout videos of like Zeke and Cabo working out.
That's right. Over under like 9.5 days.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I agree with you. If you just had to give this the eye test and had no analytics to go off, you would say like number 20 is just better. Like he just has the ability to put his foot in the ground and break away for a big play. We saw that last year. He was actually third in breakaway run rate at 8.5%.
Yeah, he's a good football player.
Great.
And he had so people love yards per carry.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not the end all be all by a long shot. I mean, Tony Pollard had a 5.53 yards per carry last year, where Zeke was only 4.23.
Which is still good.
Still good, but less than his counterpart.
The one thing with Tony Pollard, using Player Profiler to get some of these advanced metrics, he was the second most game script dependent running back. When the Cowboys were in plus game scripts, he was utilized heavily, and his expected fantasy points were well improved upon. So you look at a guy who kind of needs the right game script to happen for him to be fantasy relevant. You're talking about Tony Pollard. He was number 2. I couldn't find who was number 1, but he was the second most game script dependent guy. I think if we could see an improved position for him, it's going to be through the air. He was first in yards per route run, second in yards per touch, and third in catch rate last year. So this is a guy who has the ability to run good routes, sure-handed, catch the football. But Zeke's always been a really good pass catcher as well. So
yeah,
I think with Tony Pollard, it's really tough to draft him at 87. We're talking about the back of the 7th round. Beginning of the 7th round. 8th round. That's bad math. 8th round. We're talking about an 8th round running back. And if I'm the Zeke owner, I'm probably not drafting Tony Pollard. I would draft Tony Pollard if I didn't have Zeke, because I understand that if anything does happen to Zeke, the opportunity for Tony Pollard is sky high.
Of course.
But I wouldn't be looking at Tony Pollard as a handcuff. But if I had to choose between the two, I'm still going to hang with Ezekiel Elliott. That's my take on this, just because of the potential volume that Zeke is going to continue to have over Tony Pollard. I do witness and acknowledge the upside. I just don't think it's going to be something that you can rely on for your fantasy team.
And you bring up a good point with game script and the Dallas offense. And year over year, it's very difficult to project which defenses are truly elite.
Mm-hmm.
Last year, the Dallas Cowboys defense was phenomenal, and that limited the upside of Dak, of Amari, of CD, of Zeke, and it helped Tony Pollard because of all those negative game scripts, or positive, I guess, for the Cowboys when they just had to run up the clock, right? That's when he got the work. So if they're in more competitive game scripts, Zeke Elliott will be the guy that they lean on. And reports are saying, now, granted, this is in the offseason a month ago, that Zeke is fully healthy, back in shape. I believe he will do well this year. And I think he is a very good value going at pick 29.6. This is the latest we've ever seen Zeke Elliott. He was a mid-first round running back, no question. And
now he's a mid-third.
Yeah, and that's the value on that is phenomenal.
It is. It absolutely is.
No, I don't think he is a 300 attempt running back anymore. Now he's a 300 all-purpose running back still, with talking about attempts and receptions. He's not getting those attempts on the ground. He's not gonna crest 300, but the fantasy value is there. the Dallas Cowboys are a very good team, which project to score a lot of fantasy points, a lot of touchdowns. So the fact that he's getting disrespected like this is surprising.
Yeah, I'll take the value on Zeke all day
Yeah.
at about the 30th player off the board. The Cowboys also made mention that Zeke struggled last year, because of his PCL injury. So, having him back at full health, we'll see what he can do this year if he can continue to live up to this elite level. But this might be close to the last year for Zeke to really be, this guy.
Yeah. Oh, very well could. I mean, could they cut Zeke Elliott next year?
I believe next year is the last of his 6, if I'm not mistaken.
They're paying him a lot of money for a running back, and teams just don't do that anymore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we've got Gator fans saying Zeke, Javonte, and CH are 3 running backs I just can't take. Sorry. I would love to know your reasoning for Zeke with everything that we've kind of laid out here for you. But, I mean, like Landon said, this is the cheapest you have gotten Zeke Elliott since he was a rookie.
Yeah.
The cheapest.
And I mean, cheapest. So the next duo we're talking about is Javonte Williams and Melvin Gordon.
Mm-hmm.
And Javonte Williams is phenomenal, but he's going high. He's going to be a back of the first round, early second by the time you actually draft. Like, his draft stock continues to go up. And I mean, I love Javonte. So what are your thoughts on this duo, Mac? The value on Melvin Gordon is bananas. A guy that got 50%, 50 of the workload last year. And now they have Russell Wilson at quarterback. They project to be a really good team. But Javonte Williams is going like 80 picks before him.
I know. Yeah, the thing that scares me about Javonte Williams is his price tag. Because if he flops,
Goodbye to your
that's going to cost you, man. It's going to cost you, back of the second round. But the way that I see it is Javonte Williams came in and earned 50% of the workload as a starter, which is tough to do from an established, once elite Melvin Gordon, who actually had some really, really good production last year. But I kind of look at it this way. At worst case scenario, if there continues to be a 50-50 split, and there shouldn't be, but if there is, this offense is going to see a bump. There's no way that they can't. I mean, Russell Wilson comes in, who has one of the best winning percentages as a starting quarterback since entering the league. How does this team do worse than they did last year? How did they not score more points? How did they not spend more time in the red zone? And so for me, even if the workload is about the same, the offense should be better. So I'm already giving him a slight bump due to Russell Wilson just becoming a Denver Bronco. I think the other thing that was really nice to see is we profiled Javonte Williams last year in our rookie profile series. And we noted that he had one of the highest broken tackle rates and counts in college football in the last decade. And he comes into the league, and per Pro Football Focus, he had a forced missed tackle rate of 31%, which was the highest since Marshawn Lynch in 2014. So you want to talk about a guy who took, a strength in college and doubled down and did something really special in the league as a rookie. It just speaks to the talent that Javonte Williams is. And I don't feel any apprehensiveness to take him at 23-3. It's steep, but I'm happy to take him.
Yeah. And Melvin Gordon being the deterrent for people not taking him higher. Meanwhile, not drafting him in like 10 going at 101, but also being concerned about him at the 2-3 turn, probably mid-second. Mm-hmm. And by the time you listen to this, probably late first by the time you listen to this again. So Mack, he's one of those guys you watch, and he looks a lot like Jonathan Taylor to an extent. Like, he's got that kind of, I think he's got that kind of talent almost. Like, I know that Taylor is phenomenal, and I think he deserves to be one of the best pure running backs in the league. But Javonte, I mean, isn't super, super far off.
No.
And I love to see that he got targets in year one, getting 53 targets. I could see him getting another 10 more this year. And week one of his rookie season with Melvin Gordon, a previous All-Star, getting a 50% snap share is incredible. So the fact that he's going off of in year two, I know you touched on this, but I just want to reiterate, year two, he should command much more. An aging Melvin Gordon, who's 29 years old. We know what happens when running backs turn 30. Heck, NFL players turn 30. I don't think there's a chance that Melvin Gordon can command the target or the attempts and the targets that Javonte Williams will. So I'm not projecting that 50-50. If you can just rinse repeat from year over year, sure, they're both valuable. But it's going to be a step forward for Javonte. And I think Melvin Gordon, with that being said, at 101, I mean, he could get a 40-30% snap share and still be valuable in a good offense.
Yeah, that's the thing, right? Like, Melvin Gordon was still 12th in red zone touches last season. And they brought him back on a 1 year, $2.5 million deal, pretty much all of it guaranteed. He's essentially a cheap insurance policy, but also a guy who can absolutely produce. He might be, your change of pace guy. He might be your quote unquote starter if you want to go there. But with all these Denver Broncos flying up the board, Javonte Williams, Courtland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy, all of them are as high of a sticker price as you could pay.
Yeah,
you got Melvin Gordon sitting here at 101.1.
Yeah.
If you don't leave your drafts with Melvin Gordon, you're probably losing out on potential to return value. But if I had to choose one of them, I think we're both going Javonte Williams. I believe in the breakout this year. I believe in a larger workload. Russell Wilson, I think, brings so much to this team and the potential for them to just put on a pile of points in one of the most exciting divisions in football. Why do you not want a piece of that?
Couldn't agree more. Now we're getting to the polar opposites, but not in talent-wise.
No.
But the New York Jets are one of the worst run franchises in recent memory. I want to root for them based on the talent they have on their team. Breece Hall, one of the most athletic, talented running backs coming out of college. I know we say that almost every year, but he's really, really good. Going at pick 37.9, love him. But you know what? I liked Michael Carter too last year, and he actually proved to be quite valuable. A lot of people hoped he would be their long-term solution and a keeper maybe, or in Dynasty, someone that you could rely on. But now they take the breakout rookie Breece Hall. What are your thoughts? Are you in on either, Mac? Is this just an X beside their name, or do you like one or the other?
Well, like, speaking about Javonte Williams, he kind of profiles a lot like Breece Hall.
Yeah.
Like, really physical, really good vision, the ability to shed tackles, make people miss. I think Breece Hall is a little bit more elusive than Javonte Williams is, in the sense that he has like a lot of lateral agility, but Javonte Williams just is untackleable. So both of them are quote unquote elusive. But Michael Carter had a really, really good year or couple years with Javonte Williams at North Carolina. They were a really, really solid duo. And if you look at their stats and you take nothing into context, on paper, they pretty much produce the same yardage, the same touchdowns. And Michael Carter was the preferable pass catching option. And I think that this is where you could see Michael Carter carve out a really nice complementary role to Breece Hall. But I really do think that Breece Hall is a special talent. Like, if I had to choose or put Breece and Najee in the same class, I would take Breece Hall over Najee Harris. I think he's just a better football player. I think he's a more complete football player. That, and you look at the age, he's 21 years of age versus Najee's now 24. Like, Najee Harris is 1 year younger than Saquon Barkley.
I know, right?
He's 1 year younger than Christian McCaffrey. Like, it just is mind-blowing. But either way, like, Michael Carter at 113.8 is interesting, but I think Breece Hall, they put their money where their mouth was. They knew that they needed a guy that could be the bell cow guy who could, take the ball in the red zone on the goal line, could punch it in. That's just not who Michael Carter is, right? Michael Carter's more Duke Johnson.
Yeah, absolutely, and still valuable.
player.
And if something happens to Breece Hall or he misses any time for any reason, I mean, Michael Carter should go back to command targets and be somewhat valuable, but probably an RB2, where I do think that Breece Hall has RB1 upside based on, his athleticism, his opportunity, his pass catching ability. That's what gets these running backs, and we'll talk about it later, to this fantasy relevant stud fantasy producer is their pass catching ability, and Breece Hall can do it all.
And like Breece Hall's got that jet stank on him, unfortunately, right? As
we
most
talk
of them
about that
do,
every year.
but every year. But when does that kind of narrative go away? When you look at Zach Wilson and what they've done to surround him with talent, Breece Hall, Michael Carter, really solid duo, projects to be. Garrett Wilson, probably the best wide receiver in the draft. Comparable, I think, if you want to talk about potential, to Drake London. Elijah Moore last year had a mini breakout, and Corey Davis is no slouch either, former top 5 pick. There's so much talent on this team. There's no reason that they should not be serviceable for fantasy. So we'll see. But I'm very hopeful for Breece Hall. I think he could be what this team is missing.
Not so long ago, the Bengals had a stink on them too.
You're not, as our producer once called them, the Bungles.
The Bungles.
They the Bengals now.
They the Bengals. Who dey?
Let's jump over to Jacksonville. Travis Etienne at 41.1 or James Robinson at 121.7. A lot of uncertainty in this backfield right now. Actually, the whole team, let's just say. Trevor Lawrence coming off one of the worst rookie seasons after being praised by everybody, including ourselves. They did a lot to support him in the passing game. They brought in Christian Kirk, along with many other players. And Travis Etienne, after, Liz Frank injury, had surgery, sat out the entire first year. This is technically his rookie year. And James Robinson, we just got good news. If you missed it at the beginning of the show, he is not going to start camp on the PUP. They're optimistic that he will be ready for week 1, which is crazy after tearing his Achilles. But we know what happens with players who tear their Achilles, even though James Robinson is young. This team virtually owes nothing to James Robinson being an undrafted free agent. They spend a first-round pick on Travis Etienne. For me, that's kind of enough.
Yeah, I agree. And the archetype of a fantasy producer is that pass catcher. And we know that Travis Etienne is a very good pass catcher. He's most comparable on Player Profiler to DeAndre Swift, another running back that I love. But you talk about stank, that jet stank. The Jags, man, they reek, let me tell you. And
but a Liz Frank injury is actually fairly minor, compared to something like, an ACL, an MCL, an Achilles. A Liz Frank is very, very minor in comparison.
Yeah.
So this is definitely an injury that we see that players can come back from and have come back from and been elite. Whereas an Achilles like James Robinson, he's already got that against him. Secondly, he's got the fact that the Jags went out and drafted Travis Etienne whilst he was still healthy. Don't forget that James Robinson hadn't torn his Achilles yet.
It's true.
Right? They drafted Travis Etienne with a fully healthy James Robinson. So,
yeah, they did indeed.
Let's not forget that. Let's not also forget how good Travis Etienne is, how special he is in the pass catching game, in space. And he has a great rapport with Trevor Lawrence. So at Clemson.
Yeah. Sorry, excuse me. You're right. I am drafting Travis Etienne at that ADP. If it goes too much higher, I think because the offense doesn't score as many points and really doesn't project to, I do want to still see it from Trevor Lawrence.
Who would you rather have, Breece Hall or Travis Etienne? Because their ADPs are 3 apart.
Yeah, I think I'll just take Breece.
I would too.
Yeah.
This one's going to be really interesting. Elijah Mitchell had a breakout season, 6th round pick, absolutely popped for Kyle Shanahan, 56.4 ADP right now, which is essentially the back of the 4th round. Or you've got Tyrion Davis-Price, who currently is 170.8, or Trey Sermon, who I believe is 251, virtually undrafted in like 14 team leagues. We've seen some beat reporters come out and say that Kyle Shanahan is committed to a committee approach, that they are going to share the ball. What do you make of that? What do you make of the sticker price of Elijah Mitchell right now?
Hey, the sticker price is good.
Yeah,
I'm
not
shocked
bad
that he's going in the mid 50s. I thought after what he showed in relatively being an undrafted guy and finishing as a top 24 running back and only getting in 11 games. I mean, this guy produced fantasy points. And the San Francisco 49ers are a good team and still project to be a good team regardless of who's at quarterback. They run a very good offense with Kyle Shanahan, and he gets a lot of people the ball and gets them fantasy points. That's just what he does. And with that being said, I feel there's a part of me that's drawn towards Tyrion Davis-Price still.
They spent more capital on him than they did.
Third round pick. I mean,
they did.
Elijah Mitchell was what, a 7th round pick?
Sixth.
They
spent what, 3rd round on Trey Sermon last year?
Yeah.
Who, for the record, I think Trey Sermon's dead. For fantasy purposes, I no thank you.
Yeah, but we know that San Francisco just gets hurt. Everyone gets hurt. So there's going to be a game where we'll be touting Trey Sermon as a waiver wire pickup and play this year.
Right. No, I agree. We're talking about Elijah Mitchell, played 11 games, fantasy points per game basis, 13.4, which is on par with DeAndre Swift, Ezekiel Elliott, Aaron Jones, David Montgomery. That's what his ceiling is. That's what he's capable of doing when he's healthy. He did miss time for 4 separate injuries. Now, these are not injuries that, are going to be ones that may linger or have a tendency to repeat themselves. He had a high ankle sprain, he had a shoulder injury. Like, these are just getting banged up from playing football. Is that reason enough to think that they're going to share the workload so that they can keep him healthy, where he's not going to get starting caliber workloads?
And I think he will get the majority of the workload. And the story of today, I think, is that's enough to be valuable. I think I'm in on both. I would go both ways on either of these. There's a part of me that says I'm out on both of these duos. I mean, Trey Sermon is basically no go, but between TDP and Elijah Mitchell, there's a part of me that says, you know what, I'm staying away. I'm too scared of Trey Lance. He's going to be running the football in. I mean, Deebo Samuel runs the football in. Like, what is going to be the value of Elijah Mitchell? But I do think that he is. And I like what you said there about injuries, Mac, because it's so difficult to project injuries. It's harder to project injuries than it is touchdowns. It just doesn't happen. Like, it's very difficult year over year to say a guy is going to get hurt or not. I mean, chances are they're going to get hurt. Everyone's going to get hurt. Jonathan Taylor could get hurt, and you're still going to take him 101, right? Where we've been scoring by Christian McCaffrey year over year, but if he plays every single game, there's not a fantasy analyst out there that's going to say that you shouldn't take him 101. Deebo Samuel was a guy that was injured, and look what happened this year.
That's the thing. That's why people are taking Christian McCaffrey at 101, because they truly believe that if he plays a full season, he's going to be miles better than Jonathan Taylor, who still doesn't have that full pass catching workload that CMC does, right? Like, Jonathan Taylor still has Nyheim Hines to lose touches to, where Christian McCaffrey, whatever, they brought in Deonta Foreman, sorry. Who cares? Like, Christian McCaffrey is so special.
Yeah.
And if Elijah Mitchell plays a full season, there's no reason to believe that he can't command that type of workload, but that is not the system that they roll out. Regardless, I think that the price of a back of the 5th pick for Elijah Mitchell is enough to say, you know what, I'm going to take what I saw in 2021 as special as he can produce if he's healthy. When healthy, I'm going to roll with Elijah Mitchell and not pay attention to the Tyrion Davis-Price or Trey Sermon. And to be honest with you, I wouldn't even draft Tyrion Davis-Price in like a 12-team, 15-round draft. I would probably look to waiver him after a couple weeks if things kind of sour.
Right. Wait till the guy drops him.
Or wait till somebody drops him, or even see how the quarterback situation plays itself out. Because let's face it, if Trey Lance does become the starter for the 49ers, there's some opportunity lost on the ground there with him being as mobile as he is.
Yep.
So I think we're still rolling with Elijah Mitchell, but it's going to be a very interesting situation to see how it plays out and how Kyle Shanahan rolls these trio of backs out. On to Seattle. Seattle is entering an era where Russell Wilson is no longer their signal caller. We've got them projected to be probably the worst they've been since like the Hasselbeck days.
I know. Scary.
They drafted Kenneth Walker in the early 2nd, spent that capital on him. He's currently going as the 68th player off the board versus Rashad Penny, who's 100.1.
The discrepancy is
cray.
Astonishing.
Yeah. Look, like, I want to know what you believe. Do you think that the Seattle Seahawks drafted Kenneth Walker because they're not confident in Penny's availability, like his ability to stay healthy? Or do you have this as more of a reaction to the possibility that Chris Carson never plays football again?
Oh, yeah. I don't expect Carson to be back at all. I don't think he plays football again. I don't know why they drafted Kenneth Walker in the 2nd round at 209. That doesn't add up to me, because the teams that draft a running back this early think they're going to compete and need someone to help them make the playoffs, need a youthful running back to compete.
They run the football, man.
Well, so a team that purely runs football, and Kenneth Walker projects to not catch the football at all on a bad team, with a team that Penny is projected and should be to start the year as the starter. And the only way that Kenneth Walker gets any kind of market share is if Penny goes down. And I just brought up getting injured is hard to predict. Yes, Rashad Penny has been injury prone, has been prone to getting injured. Does that mean that he's going to get injured this year? No. He could stay healthy for the entire year, and then neither of these guys are startable. And honestly, they're both fringe players as it is. Even if they both stay healthy the entire year, I mean, it doesn't feel like you can draft either of them. You need an injury for even one of them to kind of crest that RB2, and they need to get in the end zone. And like you said to begin with, the Seattle Seahawks project to be terrible. And not be in the end zone very much.
I think their projected win total is like 5.5, and I would happily smash the under.
So what does that say? If you have to rely on touchdowns for one of these backs, what are you doing? Give your head a shake.
But these guys came last in their division last year anyways. It's not like they were a playoff team last year. I mean, Pete Carroll thought they were until the last game of the season. Feverishly chewing on that gum.
Yeah, that's what he does best.
But look, I do think that I think that Walker is a good addition to the football team. I think he's a good complement to Rashad Penny, but you're right. He does have a limited resume when it comes to catching the football. He was not asked to do that at Michigan State. He did not run a developed route tree. People say that he has good hands, quote unquote, but no one's really seen it over a larger sample size. So Mack, what we have seen is Rashad Penny, though.
Yeah, he he's balled out when he's been healthy.
Like weeks 14 through 17, if you rostered Rashad Penny last year, he won you a fantasy championship. There is
Correct.
no doubt about that. If I need to remind you, weeks 14 through 17, he was the running back one with 82.7 fantasy points, which was 31 more than Jonathan Taylor. He had 69 carries, 481 yards, and 5 touchdowns over those 4 weeks. And we're omitting a week 18 performance of 23 carries for 190 yards and a score. Rashad Penny, this is a cool little fact that I found from a sports outlet in Seattle. I can't remember their name. Rashad Penny recorded the highest rushing yards per attempt with a minimum of 100 carries in the past decade at 6.29 rushing yards per attempt. That is the most, second to Alvin Kamara in 2017 and Adrian Peterson in 2012. Rashad Penny did something really, really special at the end of last year. He showed that he can be elite. He showed why he was a first-round pick. He's never gotten a starting workload before in his career, and he finally did, and I truly believe he deserves to be the starter. Truly. So at 100, the 100th player off the board, how can you not go with Rashad Penny after last year?
Yeah, running a 4.46 at 220 pounds, 87th percentile. Like, he is fast. He's a fast running back. And now he might not have that anymore, but he's only 26 and a half. He'll be barely 27. So he's still technically, in his prime.
Still got that juice.
He still has that juice. Now I see a Ken Walker. Why do you have Kenneth Walker on our doc?
You're right. It should be Ken.
Guy goes by Ken.
Yeah, I like Kenneth. I think
I do too. I completely agree. I'm just busting your balls.
Yeah, no, you should. I saw it would change to Ken Walker on Sleeper, and it kind of threw me off. I'll probably go with what's on his birth certificate. Although I'm sure Tyrion Davis Price is not TDP, so we're all over the place here, Lando. It's
that's okay. So here we go. I do like the Rashad Penny. That's insane value going at pick 100, and I don't think he's gonna climb too much higher. Like, I don't think in your home leagues that he's gonna be much more costly. People kind of don't like him. They've been scorned, and they don't like Rashad Penny.
Yeah. Speaking about being scorned, Clyde Edwards-Helaire. 61.4 ADP compared to Ronald Jones 118.1. They brought Ronald Jones in for basically a veteran minimum. You've been seeing some chatter on Twitter that Ronald Jones could actually be cut. However, you could argue that his value, like the cost to keep him, is not really much more than what his cut price is. So will Ronald Jones make the roster? As of right now, yet to be seen, but you can't ignore the fact that Kansas City went out and signed a running back when Clyde Edwards-Helaire is still chilling there. So 61.4, it's a cheap price for Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Is the price right enough for you to warrant drafting him?
I mean, CEH has hurt me.
Oh, yeah.
Hurt me bad.
Do
Mack.
I need to cue the sad music, Lando?
I still feel it. I still feel it deep down inside, man. And I mean, Ronald Jones is only 24 years old.
Mm-hmm.
You know what? He hasn't really been productive. He hasn't really had the opportunity in Tampa Bay. It feels like they really.
I don't know. It's just disappeared.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's been a tough go for Ronald Jones. Will he be a valuable asset here? Does it need to? Okay, my question, honest question. Does Clyde Edwards-Helaire need to go down before Ronald Jones has fantasy value? Or is it going to be split 50-50, 60-40 right from the get-go?
It's so hard. Like, this is almost like the Patriots with how the Kansas City Chiefs deploy their running backs. You just never know who is going to be or how they're going to be used. Like, it's honestly a mystery. I mean, you can't ignore the fact that they drafted Clyde Edwards-Helaire to be this prolific pass catching back, safety valve for Pat Mahomes, and yet they just like haven't needed to use him. They haven't really used him that way.
You think Andy Reid asked Patrick who to draft this year or last year?
No,
I wouldn't.
No. I mean, like, Damien Williams is gone, right? Is Darrell Williams gone?
Darrell, I can look into that here. Let me just see if Darrell Williams. No, he plays for the Cardinals now.
Right. So like those two guys are gonzo. It's really just him and Ronald Jones, notably. That I kind of like Ronald Jones at his cost right now. The chatter about him potentially being cut kind of scares me, but then it also begs the question, like, well, who are you going to bring in then? Because you need to bring in someone if Ronald Jones is not sticking around. I agree with you, though. Like, Jones has had his opportunities. He, with Bruce Arians, just gotten slapped on the wrist for literally nothing, had some problems with fumbling. Does he come in and command the starting role? Probably not. Will this be maybe someone to motivate Edwards-Helaire? Maybe. Will these guys be vying for literally their job, their starting role, potentially? I think if you can give Clyde one more shot, this is a really good year to get him cheap. But as you said earlier in the show, or before we click the record button, looking at these names, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Elijah Mitchell, Rashad Penny, at their current costs, there's some really good options later in the draft where you could actually go out and hammer elite wide receivers early this year and really get away with it.
Totally. Like a Rashad Penny. I like taking a TDP at 170. Melvin Gordon at 101. Tony Pollard, AJ Dillon. There's an opportunity to go hero running back if you have a top 2 pick, and then or just hammer that Justin Jeffersons, the Jamar Chases of the world, and just get the difference maker at tight end with Darren Waller or Mark Andrews, and then get these late round running backs, and you'll make your way through it. Running backs get hurt statistically more than any other position. There's going to be weeks where Ronald Jones is a fantasy starter, and that we will tout him to pick him up off waivers or trade for him, maybe, and start him on your roster. There will be weeks, mark my words. But overall, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, I think, has the first opportunity. He says this is the first offseason he's been healthy, his first real offseason. Last year, he had a bout where he lost a bunch of weight and really looked terrible. He looked like he got run over by he looked like he got tackled by a high school football player. Some of those weeks when I watched Clyde Edwards-Helaire. If you own him in fantasy football, you could not watch a Kansas City Chiefs game. But I think there's an opportunity to get him the ball and get him a fantasy start, get him a top 15 kind of season under his belt, because there are a bunch of vacated targets in Kansas City, but no one talks about that. No one talks about that Patrick Mahomes is going to need an outlet, and Clyde Edwards-Helaire could see that come his way. There's no hype because everyone hates Clyde. Everyone's been scorned. Nobody wants him because he finished as running back 45 after being drafted as a top 12 guy.
Yep. No, you're completely right. It doesn't feel great drafting him right now, but at some point you've just like got to lick your wounds and move on. And I think that the draft price this year at the currently is pretty good for him. So that's going to do it for tonight's segment. We're going to jump into some listener questions here to kind of round out the hour and then announce our next entrant into the 2022 Listener League. I like this question here from GatorFan15. Who are the top running back 2s for a team you think have standalone flex value? Really, really good question. I think off the top of my head, the one that comes to mind first is going to be Kareem Hunt. who does still carry a pretty hefty price tag at 77.7, just behind AJ Dillon, who I also believe has standalone value, kind of like we talked about tonight. Those two would be the top of my list. Lando, what about you?
So, I mean, backup running backs to have standalone value. So where Chase Edmonds is going, he is being drafted first out of the Miami backfield, but he's going in that same range as Michael Carter, Melvin Gordon type guy. So he's going late enough that I think he might qualify. And then a guy like James Cook, I think, is someone that is a guy that always I love rookies, and we did an episode a couple weeks ago about rookie wide receivers and how they just don't produce year one. But rookie running backs are one of those diamonds that you just love to see. If you have if you draft a rookie running back that really hits out and breaks out like what Kareem Hunt did when he first got drafted by the Chiefs, man, that feels good. And I think James Cook, with his pass catching ability and being on one of the best teams in football, he's a guy that's going late enough now. Right now, I'm looking at around kind of turn of the 9-10.
101.7.
Yeah.
Yep.
So 9-10th round.
Yep.
I really like James Cook.
And I'll bring it up again. Like, if you look at the Buffalo Bills and what they potentially want to try and do with this offense, like, they tried to sign J.D. McKissick and they were unsuccessful. So they drafted that style player in the draft fairly high as well. And I was begging Breece Hall to go to this offense, but it kind of lends you to think that Devin Singletary will continue to be the first down runner, and then we'll open up options in the passing game on second and third down. So we'll see. Chris Timmons says, adding one to the split back list, David Montgomery and Khalil Herbert. There were several that we probably could have. That actually prompts me to think, if you're watching with us on YouTube and we missed a duo that you desperately want to hear a take on, feel free to comment down below. If you're listening on audio, when this comes out tomorrow, feel free to tweet at us, snap_fantasy, and we will happily respond to those questions. We had Damien Harris and Ramondre Stevenson up there. We had the carousel of backs in Miami, Chase Edmonds, Raheem Mostert, Myles Gaskin up there. Ultimately, just for time, cut it to the ones we thought were most interesting. But I definitely do acknowledge this one as well.
Khalil looked great in the limited work he had. He had 23 attempts for San Francisco. He didn't do a ton with it, but the week before he had 18 carries for 100 yards and really looked good against Tampa Bay, one of the best defenses in football. So
he really helped patch some holes for David Montgomery owners. I had him in 2 leagues last year, and I was thrilled, absolutely thrilled.
He could be one of those guys. If the Bears turn out to be a good team, he could be one of those premium handcuffs that the Alexander Madisons of the world that you just need to have. David Montgomery is the clear-cut guy there, and I think he's proven that he's earned that starting role and really looked good doing it. Like, pound for pound, like, just a good runner. Like, doesn't catch the football really much, but like, just a good runner. Watch him on tape, and he looks powerful.
Another one that I was going to talk about was Damian Pierce and Marla Mack, but ultimately came down to they're both going at about the same draft price. Damian Pierce is slightly ahead, but it's like we're talking about the Houston running offense.
And that's the thing with these ones, right? Like,
who really cares?
And the Bears kind of qualify under that. Like, their team's pretty bad. That who cares? In Atlanta too, it's a tough one. If getting these RB2s, it's really tough if you're on a bad team.
Yeah.
You're going to have to get lucky. You got to get in the end zone. You got to catch a screen pass, garbage time. It's tough.
Another question here: in a 2 QB league where you may lose out on value at top positions, wide receivers and running backs because you're prioritizing quarterback, where do you draw the line on who you're willing to have as your running back 1 and wide receiver 1? I think this really comes down to how your draft unfolds.
Yeah, that's a good question. It's a good question, but you're right. You have to see how hungry your teammates are for quarterbacks, because quarterbacks are extremely valuable.
Yep.
And
I'm going to look to our Scott Fishbowl draft board here, because it's a super flex, like a 2 QB league, and it's also tight end premium, so you have to factor that in as well. But tight ends really didn't go off the board like we thought they would in our draft. But to give you an idea, Landon and I started Lamar Jackson and then Matthew Stafford. In the middle of the 3rd round, we got to DeAndre Swift as our running back 1. We got Javonte Williams as a running back 2 and Ezekiel Elliott as a running back 3. We hammered running back in rounds 3, 4, 5. So, DeAndre Swift at running back 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Running back 9 for us. There was only 8 running backs taken before our pick in the middle of the 8th round. So in a 2 QB league, you really get those positions pushed back. But if I could get somebody as a top 12 option as my running back 1 and wide receiver 1, I think I'm going to be really, really stoked.
So the latest I would draft my running back 1, according to our Scott Fishbowl draft, Miles Sanders at 7-12. I would be okay with him as my running back 1.
Oof.
I
hate
and
that.
then I'd have to be like an AJ Dillon or Clyde Edwards-Helaire, who went like 8 picks after him as my running back 2. Like I'd be okay with that duo basically.
I'm looking at the 11th team in our draft. We're not going to name names, I guess, but their start was Kelsey, Hurts, Carr, Tyreek Hill, and then their first running back was Breece Hall at 5-2, and then Josh Jacobs at 7-2. I don't hate that.
No, I don't mind that. I like Jacobs. Yeah,
Jacobs is fine. Obviously, there's some risk with a rookie running back, but he projects to be very, very solid. Again, if I could get like a top 12 running back as my first running back, I think I would be happy with that. So really the cutoff for me is like Nick Chubb. Nick Chubb is like the cutoff.
Okay, so that's the worst running back 1 you would want.
Would I take James Conner? Sure. Would I be thrilled with Cam Akers? No, probably not.
Right.
Yeah.
As for a wide receiver, we have Waddle as our wide receiver 1. So I think that's
wide receiver is a little different for me, because I think it really truly does depend on if you have a 2 wide receiver or 3 wide receiver league. If you have a 3 wide receiver league, I think I would be more inclined to hit that wide receiver earlier, because you just have to start one more than the running back position. So I think I'd be willing to lose out on running backs a little bit and go with like a Elijah Mitchell, Rashad Penny build if I could prioritize like a Jamar Chase, Mike Evans, I don't know, Rashad Bateman build at wide receiver.
Yeah. I mean, you shouldn't have to. In a 2 quarterback league, you have to, if you punt one position, you shouldn't have to compromise on the other, right?
Correct.
So if you should be stacked at wide receiver, if your running back 1 is a guy like Miles Sanders, like I just said. So you should, right?
Yeah.
One or the other.
Yeah, exactly. In a 2 QB league, you should prioritize quarterbacks, but so should everybody else. And so that should push the value down the board. But I think it all comes down to, are you starting 2 wide receivers or 3?
Yeah.
Anyways, that's going to round out the show tonight. Before we leave, 2022 Listener League entrant, Gator Fan 15.
Hey, my man.
Welcome.
He's on the stream right now. Welcome into the Listener League. We appreciate you pining for that position, my friend. Hopefully you enjoy it. We will add you to the Sleeper League. Send us a DM with your handle. And if any of y'all listening, now we're after the fact, want to be a part of our Listener League, DM us on socials. Reach out to us personally. Go check out
Discord.
Number one, our Discord is the best way to do it. And then anyone can see, and everyone will see that you're interested and want to play in it. And we appreciate anyone who does.
Yeah, it's been, this is our 4th year running it. It's been awesome. Dynasty Nate is creating a really interesting scoring system. It's called efficiency-based scoring. It's going to model kind of like a Scott Fishbowl experience. So if you missed out on that, you're going to get kind of an experience, a really unpredictable draft, because you just can't predict the scoring settings and what they might lead to and what positions are going to be valuable and invaluable. So Listener League 2022, we're coming off a championship. We want some really dedicated and active players to try to take us down. And we're looking forward to it, man. So again, join the Discord, tweet us, gram us, snap_fantasy. We will be, ramping up heading into the season. Appreciate you guys for tuning into the stream or listening to us on Apple Podcasts. As always, like, comment, subscribe. Really appreciate that. Also, leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. Really helps the channel grow. So we'll see you guys next week. Likely going to be back on, scheduled time Tuesday evening instead of a Monday. Hopefully you guys have a good week, and preseason's right around the corner. So stay locked in. We'll see you soon.
Goodbye.